Okay, why would you go down this path? Why would you bother to bring somebody in to tell you what you hope you already know? Because every time we talk to a client, what happens is that they say, well, I know how to do that stuff. I know how to do this. If I'm going to do an ERP deployment, I'll just trust the systems integrator to do the ERP deployment. Why wouldn't they do a good job for me? Well, the fact of the matter is that the history is not very good here. I mean, there is good people out there doing good work, but when you look at some of the larger types of systems out there, and it doesn't matter whether it's an ERP, a CRM, a portable services, even a large custom application, there's been a lot of failures out there. How bad is it? Well, take a look at these numbers. 34% of ERP implementations succeed with full functionality, within forecast, and within custom timeframes. Just 34%. This information incidentally comes from the Standish Group, but it's also the same information with the Gartner Group, the Foresters, and all the other guys out there. Cost overruns. Typical cost overrun, 43%. Now, when you think about some of the size of these projects, I mean, you're talking here $10 million, $15 million projects. That's an awful lot of dollars overrun. Schedule's even worse. Average schedule overrun for large applications like this, 82%. It takes almost twice as long as people expected to actually do this work. And probably the worst one of all, and the one that gets missed all the time, is functionality. The projects that come in reasonably close to time and cost, and everybody's sort of saying, great, done a good job. Most of the time, the way they do it is by stripping out functionality. So they start with the intent of doing 50 things and finish up doing 20 things. They fit within the budget, but they don't do all the stuff. And so functionality is definitely a problem here, with only 52% actually hitting all the functionality. Now think about functionality for a minute. The reason why people go down these paths is because they're trying to fix something. They're trying to solve a business problem. If you take 50% of the functionality out of your solution, do you think you're going to solve your business problem? Not very likely. And that's one of the reasons why the perception around these large systems is, even if they got there in time and they got there with some decent functionality, the perception often is that they failed. And it's simply because it wasn't what the client was expecting. It wasn't what the customer was expecting. You'll see from the graphs at the bottom also that there's an interesting scenario here. The larger the project gets, the worse the situation gets. This is an average for all the projects. You probably can't see it too well, but if you get anything much above 30 months and anything much above 10 million, then the line disappears off the bottom of the graph, meaning that virtually none of them were actually successful without hitting these problems. That's one of the reasons why the government, the General Accounting Office's GAO, said fairly recently, in the last probably 12 months, said that, you know, this is happening to all our projects, because all our projects are like this. So you're going to have to get some independent validation in, because this is not working. I don't know if any of you read the CIO magazine, but CIO magazine actually picked up on the report from the GAO, and I think the front page was the government flunks on its projects. As you can imagine, it got a lot of attention. And so independent validation and verification became part of the requirements for these types of projects. And slowly but surely in the commercial environment, we're seeing more and more people do the same thing. Why do they do the same thing? Well, one of the reasons is because it's a relatively small investment to get very significant paybacks. One of the interesting things about this whole equation is that from our calculations, and backed up by a guy called Steve McConnell. Has anybody read Steve McConnell's books? Great books, if you get a chance to read them, great books. And this graph was actually unashamedly pulled out of his book. And basically what it says is that there was a sweet spot in terms of putting money into, they call it generically risk management, but IV&V is a superset of risk management. And what they're saying is that if you put between 5 and 12% of your budget into structured risk management, then the payback in terms of your reliability, your chance of hitting your schedule and cost goes up dramatically. And you can see actually from here that it goes up Between 5%, you've got a 75% chance of hitting it, which is better than the statistics, a lot better. Up to 12% of budget, up to 90% of hitting the schedule and the cost. That's a pretty big deal for that investment in money. And this has been proven many, many, many times. It's been proven many, many times through our experience of doing assessments. It's been proven many, many times from other people writing books about this stuff too. So it's a very, very good payback. I mean, you're talking about a very small investment to get a very significant payback in terms of the increased reliability around schedule, getting it done on time, and cost, getting it done on budget. More importantly, this also has a very dramatic effect upon functionality, a much greater effect upon functionality. You tend to get more done during that time period. So the numbers speak for themselves. It's a very, very good investment, a very good investment. Now, some organizations, if they're highly risk intolerant, will actually pay up to 25% for this. There's some biotech and pharmaceutical companies out there that will pay up to 25%. But at 25%, you can see from the graph you're in diminishing returns at that point. And so a lot of the main companies out there are typically going to pay somewhere between 5 and 12% for this. The average that we see is about 8% of budget. Buys you an awful lot of predictability, an awful lot of benefit from the result of that investment. So it's worthy of considering, even within your own organizations, how much work are you really putting into IV&V or risk management? How much are you actually thinking about formalizing, assessing the risks, managing the risks, mitigating the risks? Because frankly, if it's below 5% and you're working on a very large project, the news is not good. It's really not good. I mean, you could finish up with the statistics we just talked about. And we see it all the time, unfortunately. Questions about this? You guys seen this before? It's a very interesting book. I would certainly suggest you take a look at Mr. McConnell's book. Very good book.